Don't eat that! The scream cut through the elegant dining room like a knife, freezing every conversation in the Sterling, one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants. The crystal glasses stopped clinking. The soft jazz from the corner piano faded into background noise, and every head turned toward the source of the desperate cry. 12-year-old Malik Washington stood pressed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, his small fists pounding against the glass. His worn sneakers squeaked against the polished sidewalk as he jumped, trying to get someone, anyone, inside to notice him. His oversized hoodie, 3 sizes too big and faded from too many harsh winters on Chicago's South Side, made him look even smaller against the backdrop of Michigan Avenue's gleaming storefronts. Inside the restaurant, the wealthy patrons exchanged uncomfortable glances. A homeless kid yelling outside wasn't exactly what they'd paid $200 per plate to experience. Most turned back to their conversations, dismissing him as just another distraction from the streets. But Malik wasn't giving up. He'd seen something that made his blood run cold, something that would haunt him forever if he didn't act. At table 7, Bernard Crawford, a distinguished black man in his 70s with silver hair and kind eyes, sat across from his wife, Miranda. Bernard had built his fortune from nothing, starting with a small construction company in Bronzeville and growing it into a multi-million-dollar empire. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration of their second wedding anniversary. Though at 73, Bernard sometimes wondered if marrying a 35-year-old woman had been the right choice. Miranda Crawford was stunning in the way that money could perfect. Her blonde hair was salon-perfect, her makeup flawless, and her red dress probably cost more than most people made in a month. She smiled at Bernard across the table, her fingers delicately wrapped around a small crystal vial that she'd just emptied into his soup. Malik had watched it all unfold from outside. He'd been there for 20 minutes, hoping someone would spare some change or maybe order too much food and leave leftovers. That's when he noticed the woman's careful movements, the way she'd glanced around before pulling the vial from her purse, the deliberate way she'd stirred the soup after adding whatever was in that little bottle. The boy's heart pounded as he watched Bernard lift the spoon toward his lips. That's when Malik lost all control and started screaming. "Don't eat that!" She put something in it. "Don't eat that!" Bernard paused, the spoon halfway to his mouth. He looked toward the window where Malik stood, wild-eyed and desperate. For a moment, their eyes met through the glass. An elderly millionaire and a kid who probably hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. Miranda's face hardened. "Bernard, ignore him," she said quickly, reaching across to touch his hand. "He's just trying to cause trouble. You know how these kids are." But something in Malik's eyes stopped Bernard cold. The boy wasn't asking for money. He wasn't performing for attention. The terror on his face was real, raw, and impossible to fake. "What did you say?" Bernard asked, though the glass muffled Malik's words. Miranda's grip tightened on his wrist. "Bernard, please, don't let some street kid ruin our anniversary dinner." The restaurant manager, a thin man named Phillips, was already moving toward the door. "Sir, I'll have security remove him immediately. I'm so sorry for this disruption." But Bernard held up his hand. Something wasn't right. In his 73 years, he'd learned to trust his instincts, and right now, every instinct told him to listen to the boy outside. "Wait," Bernard said, setting down his spoon. "Let me talk to him." Miranda's face went pale. "That's ridiculous. He's probably high on something. You can't seriously think." "I can, and I will," Bernard said firmly. There was steel in his voice now, the same tone that had commanded boardrooms for decades. Phillips reluctantly opened the door, and Malik burst inside like a hurricane. His sneakers slapped against the marble floor as he ran toward Bernard's table, ignoring the shocked gasps from other diners. "Sir, sir, please." Malik was breathing hard, his words tumbling over each other. "Your wife. She put something in your soup. I saw her. She had a little bottle. And when you weren't looking, she—" "That's enough." Miranda stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "How dare you accuse me of something so vile? You're just a homeless child trying to cause trouble." The restaurant had gone completely silent. Every patron, every waiter, every busboy stopped what they were doing to watch the scene unfold. Some pulled out their phones, sensing drama worth recording. Bernard looked at Malik, really looked at him. The boy's clothes were old and worn, but clean. His eyes were bright with intelligence, not dulled by drugs or alcohol. And most importantly, he had nothing to gain from this accusation except trouble. "What's your name, son?" Bernard asked gently. "Malik, sir. Malik Washington." "Okay, Malik, tell me exactly what you saw." Miranda tried to interrupt, but Bernard held up a hand. "Let him speak." Malik took a shaky breath. "I was outside, just watching people eat. Because I haven't eaten today. And I saw your wife when you were on your phone. She looked around real careful-like. Then she pulled out this tiny glass bottle from her purse. It had clear liquid in it. She poured it into your soup and stirred it up real good." "That's insane!" Miranda shrieked. "Bernard, you cannot possibly believe this lying little—" "Where's your purse?" Bernard asked quietly. Miranda blinked. "What?" "Your purse. If there's nothing to hide, you won't mind showing us." For the first time since Malik could remember, an adult was taking him seriously. Not shooing him away, not calling him a liar, not treating him like he was invisible. Miranda clutched her designer handbag closer to her chest. "I don't have to prove anything to anyone, especially not to some street rat who—" "Actually, you do." The voice came from behind them. A tall black woman in a police uniform stepped into the restaurant. "I'm Officer Williams. Someone called about a disturbance." Phillips raised his hand. "Yes, officer. This child has been harassing our customers with wild accusations." Officer Williams looked around the room, taking in the scene. Her eyes lingered on Malik, then on Miranda's defensive posture, then on Bernard's untouched soup. "What kind of accusations?" she asked. Malik found his voice again. "I saw her put poison or something in his soup. I swear on my mama's grave, I saw her do it." Officer Williams turned to Miranda. "Ma'am, may I see your purse? This is harassment. I don't have to—" "Actually, if there's a credible threat to someone's safety, I can ask you to cooperate. Would you prefer to do this here or at the station?" The restaurant was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the water glasses. Miranda's face cycled through several emotions: anger, fear, calculation, and finally, defeat. "Fine!" she spat, throwing her purse onto the table. "But when you find nothing, I'm suing everyone in this room." Officer Williams carefully opened the purse and began examining its contents. Makeup, wallet, keys, breath mints, and at the bottom, wrapped in a tissue, a small glass vial with a few drops of clear liquid still clinging to the sides. The collective gasp from the dining room was audible. "Ma'am," Officer Williams said, her voice deadly serious. "What is this?" Miranda's face crumbled. All the poise, all the arrogance, all the carefully constructed facade fell away, like a house of cards. It's just—" But she couldn't finish the sentence. There was no explanation that would make this look innocent. Bernard stared at his wife, his second wife, the woman he'd trusted with his heart and his fortune, as if seeing her for the first time. "Miranda," he whispered, his voice broken. "Why?" For a moment, she looked genuinely stricken. "Bernard, the prenup. You don't understand the pressure. You were going to kill me for money?" "I wasn't going to kill you," she protested, though her voice lacked conviction. "It was just supposed to make you sick, maybe give you a heart episode. You're old, Bernard. People would understand." The words hit the room like physical blows. Several diners covered their mouths in shock. Someone whispered, "Oh my God," loud enough for everyone to hear. Officer Williams was already reaching for her handcuffs. "Miranda Crawford, you're under arrest for attempted murder and—" "Wait," Bernard said quietly. All eyes turned to him. He looked at Malik, who stood frozen in the middle of the dining room, probably wondering if he was in trouble too. "Young man," Bernard said, his voice gentle despite everything that had just happened, "come here." Malik approached cautiously. He'd learned not to trust adults completely, even the ones who seemed kind. "You saved my life tonight," Bernard said simply. "Do you understand that?" Malik nodded slowly. "When was the last time you ate?" "Yesterday, sir. Maybe the day before. Time gets fuzzy when—" Bernard's heart clenched. This child, this brave, observant, compassionate child, had risked everything to save a stranger, and he was starving. "Officer Williams," Bernard said, "before you take her away, may I have a moment?" The officer nodded, maintaining her grip on Miranda's arm. Bernard stood and walked to where Malik stood, then knelt down so they were eye level. "What you did tonight took incredible courage. You didn't know me. You had nothing to gain, and you could have gotten in serious trouble. But you spoke up anyway." Malik shuffled his feet. "I couldn't just watch her hurt you, sir." "Where are your parents, son?" "My mama passed last year. Cancer. Don't know where my daddy is." Bernard felt his eyes fill with tears. "Where have you been staying?" "Wherever I can. Shelters when they got space. Sometimes under the bridge on Lower Wacker when they don't." The restaurant was listening to every word. Some of the diners were crying openly now. "Not anymore," Bernard said firmly. "Malik Washington, how would you like to come home with me?" Malik's eyes went wide. "Sir?" "I'm serious. I've got a big house. Too big for one person. You saved my life tonight. Let me return the favor." But, I'm just—" "You're just what? Brave? Smart? Compassionate? Those are exactly the qualities I admire in a person." Officer Williams, who had been watching this exchange with growing emotion, cleared her throat. "Mr. Crawford, there are legal procedures for—" "I'll call my lawyer tonight," Bernard said without taking his eyes off Malik. "We'll do this right. Legal, proper. But this boy isn't spending another night on the streets. Not after what he did for me." Malik looked around the restaurant at all the faces watching him. For the first time in his life, they weren't looking at him with pity or disgust or fear. They were looking at him with respect. "Would that be okay with you, Malik?" Bernard asked. The boy nodded, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. "Good," Bernard smiled, the first genuine smile he'd had all evening. "Now, let's get you some food. You must be starving." As Officer Williams led Miranda away in handcuffs, the woman's designer heels clicking against the marble like a countdown to justice, the restaurant slowly came back to life. But it was different now. The conversations were quieter, more thoughtful. Several patrons approached Malik to tell him how brave he was. One woman pressed a $20 bill into his hand for being a hero. The manager, Phillips, approached Bernard's table looking mortified. "Sir, I am so deeply sorry about this evening. Your meal is completely complimentary, of course. And if there's anything— Actually, there is something, Bernard said. This boy is hungry. I'd like you to bring him the biggest, best meal your kitchen can prepare. Of course, sir. Right away. As they waited for Malik's food, Bernard called his lawyer and began the process of emergency custody arrangements. Malik sat across from him, still overwhelmed by the rapid turn his life had taken. "Sir," Malik said quietly, "you can call me Bernard, or Mr. Bernard if that's more comfortable." "Mr. Bernard, why are you doing this? I mean, I know I helped you, but—" Bernard set down his phone and looked at the boy seriously. "Malik, in my 73 years, I've learned that character isn't about how much money you have or what neighborhood you come from. Character is about doing the right thing when nobody's watching, when you have nothing to gain, and when it would be easier to look the other way." He paused, his voice growing stronger. "Tonight, you showed more character than most adults I know. You saw injustice, and you spoke up. You saw danger, and you acted. You saw someone in need, and you risked yourself to help them." Malik listened intently. "The world needs more people like you, Malik. And if you'll let me, I'd like to help you become the man I already see in you." When Malik's food arrived, a massive plate of steak, mashed potatoes, vegetables, and bread, he stared at it for a long moment before eating. It was more food than he'd seen in weeks. "Take your time," Bernard said gently. "It's not going anywhere." As Malik ate, Bernard made more phone calls, to his lawyer, to social services, to his housekeeper to prepare a bedroom. By the time they left the restaurant, Malik's future was secure. 6 months later, Malik Washington Crawford stood in Bernard's study, wearing a crisp school uniform and holding a report card full of A's. The scared, hungry boy from the streets had transformed into a confident young man with dreams and goals. "I'm proud of you, son," Bernard said, and meant every word. "Thank you for believing in me, Dad," Malik replied, using the word that had come naturally after Bernard officially adopted him. "I didn't make you into anything you weren't already," Bernard said. "I just gave you the opportunity to show the world what I saw that night at the restaurant." The story made national news, not because of the attempted murder, but because of what happened after. Bernard's story inspired others to look beyond stereotypes, to see potential instead of problems, to understand that heroes come in all ages and from all backgrounds. Miranda was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The prenup she'd been so worried about? It would have given her millions, even without Bernard's death. Her greed and impatience had cost her everything. But for Malik and Bernard, the story was just beginning. Together, they started a foundation to help homeless youth, providing not just shelter and food, but education, mentorship, and hope. "Every child deserves a chance," Bernard would tell audiences when he spoke about their work. "Sometimes all they need is one person to believe in them." Malik, now in high school and planning to study law, would add, "And sometimes all you need is the courage to speak up when you see something wrong. Your voice matters, no matter how small you think you are." Their story became a reminder that heroism isn't about capes and superpowers. Sometimes it's about a 12-year-old boy who refused to stay silent when someone's life was in danger. Sometimes it's about an old man who saw past appearances to recognize true character. And sometimes it's about understanding that the person who saves you might be the one you least expect. In a world that often judges by appearances, Malik and Bernard proved that courage, character, and compassion are colorblind, age-blind, and class-blind. They exist in the hearts of those brave enough to act when action is needed most. Never underestimate the power of speaking up. Never dismiss someone because of how they look or where they come from. And never forget that sometimes the smallest voice can make the biggest difference. Because you never know when a homeless kid's warning might save a life, change a destiny, and remind everyone watching that heroes walk among us every day. We just need to be wise enough to recognize them. If this story moved you, remember that every day presents opportunities to be someone's hero. It doesn't require wealth or power, just the courage to do what's right when it matters most.